Hey guys, I'm Tim Weiss with Red Dog Bushcraft. Welcome to another video series in our cutting tools section. Now I think we'd be a little remiss if we didn't talk about our next item as we start talking about chainsaws. Because even though you don't hear a whole lot about chainsaws when it comes to the bushcraft world, but in the homestead and survival world it becomes a very necessary tool. One that if we have access to can make fast work of a lot of cutting. There's a couple of precautions that I want to lead right out into. This is not a how-to video, and I'm definitely not a chainsaw expert. I would recommend that you go on the internet and look up chainsaw safety and proper use and refer to those manufacturer videos. Stihl, who makes the saw that I'm going to show you today, has some excellent videos out there on the safe use, proper maintenance, and long-term care for your chainsaws, and I highly recommend those sources. But for a homestead type environment and getting a lot of work done, a chainsaw can be very useful. It can be a dangerous tool because it's used to remove material. That chainsaw doesn't care if it's your leg or if it's an oak board. It's going to remove the material just the same. So extreme caution is always needed. And as we're talking about the caution, let's talk about actually going out and deciding what is the best chainsaw for you. What I recommend is what I did. I went out and I looked at what my local highway department, the fire departments, the industry, as in forestry industry, what is the saw that is very common in your area? And you'll probably have a couple from that point to choose from. And then spend a little bit of time and research and decide on what is the brand. I base mine on both the people who were using them that made a recommendation of what saw for me to purchase for a home type use, but then they recommended something that I thought was very smart. They said don't get the homeowner's version, go ahead and get the heavy duty industrial type version. And the reason they did this is because it's usually a heavier duty saw and the parts are readily available and the places around my area that can work on that saw are plentiful. And I think that's an important attribute of buying a saw, is making sure that you're able to get parts and have that saw serviced from a service dealer. So I chose Stihl. Stihl has always been a good saw in our area. They do a lot of work for the fire departments in this area, and they donate a lot of money, time, and resources to the fire department. So it was a chance for me to buy the products of the people who help us out. And I've been very pleased with my product. Now this is this is the Stihl MS310. It's in an 18-inch. I decided on that for my area and the type of firewood and the type of cutting that I do. An 18-inch seems to meet my needs most of the time. I do pretty much anything I need to do with that 18-inch. Now when you consider your saw, there's a couple of things that you need to consider along with that investment, and you need to consider these right off the bat, because buying the saw by itself, you're only getting half the job done. A good case to store that saw in will save you a lot of trouble. It helps protect your equipment, and it helps keep whatever you're transporting or storing that saw in a lot cleaner. I went ahead and bought an extra bar to go along with my saw, because sometimes, you know, you pinch that thing and these things do wear out over time, and I want to have an extra one because when something happens to the saw, it's going to be the time that you really need it, and that's not when I want to be down and be back to using an axe. The other thing is a couple of these extra chains. You can go ahead and pick them up at the same time. Your saw will come with the tool that you need to change those, and an extra spark plug and air filter is also a great thing to have on hand. I keep those in a little small plastic box. This small Pelican type box, I keep a spare spark plug, the air filter, the wrench, 2 extra chains, and I think an oily rag, along with the files and the little device that slaps on top of the chain that guides you to sharpen the chain. Having those tools to properly maintain that equipment out in the field can be very helpful. The other thing that you may want to consider while you're out there is your safety protection if you don't already have that. Using earplugs and good earmuffs can help you tremendously. The thing puts out a lot of noise and it can be detrimental to your hearing, so I always recommend that. I've had a significant amount of hearing loss and I can't afford to lose any more. A good pair of these pants right here. This is a pair of chainsaw safety pants. They're designed so that if you come in contact with that chain, it removes material from that pants, slows down that chain and binds it up so that it doesn't cut down deep into your skin. We've already covered the tools. A pair of safety glasses, a good pair of work gloves that stay right here in the pocket are both really good things to have, as well as just being properly dressed. You know, having the right clothing on for the environment, your safety glasses on, your ears protected, your feet protected, good proper shoes, not just for the protection of the chainsaw, but also for being practical for the environment that you're going to be working on, something that will give you some support. Couple of other considerations you might want to think about is having a designated gas can in whatever size that you plan on mixing up your fuel. Steel, when I bought this, gave me a case of pre-mixed, it already has a fuel stabilizer and the oil that's needed to mix with the gasoline already mixed together in a little container, and it makes 1 gallon batches. So I bought a small gas can that is marked at the 1 gallon level, and that's all I use that for, is that mixed gas, and it's designated as my chainsaw gas can. Another option for that, if you decide to just mix your own fuel, is having a good fuel stabilizer or some type of a cleaner product with you, and do your research if you use something other than what the manufacturer's recommendation is, to make sure that it does not separate that oil and gas mixture. You want to make sure that you have the stabilizer in there, but that when you mix your gas and oil, they stay mixed. That's very important for your engine on your chainsaw. Having a quality bar oil to go along with your chainsaw, that's what's recommended for those saws, and that's what they're made to run off of. I've seen people use everything from used motor oil to different weights of engine oil, and although they may work, I'm no expert in that field. I would rather just use the chain lube that is recommended for that saw. It's of the proper viscosity and concentration that it needs to be to oil and lubricate that chain as it cuts. And you know, most of the time, the chain is really what gives us most of the problems. Hitting something on the ground, dulling that chain, or it getting too hot and stretching is a lot of the issues that you see when people, especially people who don't run a chainsaw every day, get out and start doing work with their saws. Now, one final thought, they're selling a pre-mixed fuel now, and I'll show you this one. I picked this up at, I believe it was either Lowe's, Home Depot, or Ace Hardware, I'm not sure. The first can of it I bought was actually made by Steel, but this is called True Fuel. It's already mixed for a 50-to-1, which is the ratio that my saw calls for, and it's ready to go. And I don't use this all the time. It's pretty expensive. I want to say this 1 quart can, I want to say it was about $5 for this. But the nice thing about it is it's pre-mixed, it's 92 octane, and this is a, well, let's see here. It has a synthetic oil that meets or exceeds the warranty requirements of the manufacturer for air-cooled 2-cycle engines requiring 50-to-1 mixing ratios for Steel, Husqvarna, ESCO, and it lists several other manufacturers. And it is made with a non-ethanol fuel, and it is I believe it is 90, I believe it was like 92 or 94 octane, but it's the fuel that is designed for these engines. Now, where this really comes in handy is in the wintertime around here, we need to keep a chainsaw because trees block the roads and you have to cut your way out and you need to cut your way back home. And having a can like this that's sealed up with a shelf life, it says on here somewhere, but it's several years that the shelf life is good for on that fuel. for those storms when they come at the last minute and you don't have your gas can pre-mixed. It's just a handy thing to have. The other time that it's really good to have is if you're out bucking a lot of wood or cutting a lot of firewood and you're getting towards the end of that season and you run out of your fuel with your stabilizer or what have you in it, because you're out in the woods and you're cutting, when you get home you can top it off with that fuel, run it a little bit, make sure you've got a good mix in there, and that seems to really help us at the fire department with the longevity of our equipment and keeping those carburetors and those fuel injectors clean. And like I said, having that saw to where it's clean, it's prepped, it's sharp, it starts on that first pull and will serve you well is very important. So remember to watch those safety videos before you get out there and start using any type of equipment like this. It is absolutely important. I have seen some very, very traumatic injuries from chainsaws. They're fantastic tools. They work well for their intended purpose, but with anything else, just like anything else I should say, you've got to have your head in the right place and you've got to be able to follow those safety instructions to have a good experience with them. So thanks for joining me one more time for this something that we don't see a whole lot when you start talking about the bushcraft and the survival world, but something that I think will be very beneficial and give you some ideas of some things to think about if you don't own a chainsaw or if you're in the market and you're thinking about going out and looking for one. So thanks for joining me once again. I'm Tim Lanks with Red Dog Bushcraft, home of global safety and survival. And until next time, guys, God bless.